everyone, and welcome to the Entrepreneurs in a Game podcast. I am thrilled to have a very special guest with me today, Dan Cuprill. He's a dear friend and he's absolutely wonderful at what he does. He is the creator of Advisor Architect, a system of systems designed to teach financial advisors how to transition from running a high-cost sales office to owning a major profit center. A financial advisor himself, Dan's achieved the true entrepreneurial dream of working on his business rather than in it. In fact, he lives over 300 miles away from his office. Dan, a very warm welcome to the Entrepreneurs in a Game podcast. And what I love about you and your work is that you actually live the dream.
Oh, well, thank you, Nina. That's nice of you to say. And I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. So let's dive in. I'd love to know about how you came to achieve your success. So what brought you to this stage? And what are the pivotal points in your life? And obviously, I'd love you to weave in mindset in there as well and how that impacted your decisions along the way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I always like to point out that I don't have an original idea in my head. Everything that I do, I learned from somebody else. If I have one unique skill, it's the willingness to implement the stuff. I don't let failure really hold me back. In fact, I kind of expect to fail in a lot of cases. I maintain my optimism by expecting you're going to have setbacks. So every time I meet with a potential client, statistically, I know that actually the odds are it's not going to work out. So I don't let that, hold me back. I just kind of go along with it. But I've always been one who's been able to read a book and apply things. And so if I think back career-wise, when I was the first 10 years of my career, I was working for a large insurance company and they were very good to me, but I was miserable. I hated working for somebody else, just wasn't my thing. And shortly after deciding to become a financial advisor and leave the company and leave the nice salary and the insurance benefits, which here in the US are nice because we don't get them automatically and all this stuff, had a small child to take care of. A friend of mine gave me a copy of Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth. And that book, I remember I actually got it on tape, which, back then you literally had cassette tapes. There wasn't digital back then.
I remember we're very old, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, ancient. Listen, we remember black and white television, don't we? So.
We do.
But I remember literally cutting the grass, listening to this book and getting this idea about working on your business rather than in your business as really the definition of being an entrepreneur. I think that word entrepreneur gets so overused. It's like people who are selling stuff on eBay in their basement are calling themselves entrepreneurs. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. If you extract yourself from the operation, it falls apart. A real entrepreneur has it set up so that he or she can go away, and actually it probably runs better. So that was always my intent as I built the planning firm, was I wanted everything to be systematized. I didn't want to wing anything. So if you go to McDonald's, and it's funny on McDonald's, if you go to McDonald's anywhere in the United States, the food tastes the same. Now, that's not true globally, because I've had McDonald's in Scotland. It did not taste the same. It didn't taste even. You people like to burn your burgers, by the way. I just want you to know. Hey, you British people, everything's got to be burnt. But anyway.
We call it well done.
Oh my gosh. I was once at this really nice restaurant in Scotland. And I said at the last day, and I said to the waiter, I go, look, if I ask you to bring it to me medium rare, are you just going to nod your head and bring it to me burnt, or are you going to bring it to me medium rare? And he goes, oh no, I assure you, it'll be medium rare. Yeah, it was burnt.
That's the way we like our meat.
I digress. Anyway, but a company like McDonald's is incredibly systematic. There's nothing that they do that they haven't thought about. Does the ketchup go in front of the counter? Does it go behind the counter? How long do the fries stay in the oil while they're being cooked? And how long can they be out before they have to be tossed because the grease starts to soak in and they don't taste very well? They've got that all systematized, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I saw that when I was in my early 30s, and I thought, well, this is the way you should build every business, let alone a planning firm. And so that was the goal. Now, I couldn't get there overnight, but I laid it out. And we change the systems all the time, but there's literally a standard procedure manual. And we have meetings to discuss, okay, are we going to change this? Everything down to how does the dishwasher get emptied, quite frankly. I mean, it's not that myopic, but it does say what day the dishwasher needs to be emptied out, by whom, etc. That's all set up that way. So a couple of years ago, my wife and I were down in Nashville, Tennessee, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with U.S. geography, my office is in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is in the northern part of the country, and it tends to get cold and dreary at times. And Nashville is about a 4.5 hour drive south, but the weather changes dramatically and the terrain changes dramatically. And we used to go down here often to vacation and have always liked it. So one day we're down here for just a couple of days. And we came across this area that I now live in. And I just thought, well, what if? I said, look, I got the business pretty much running on its own. Why can't we do this? And there's really no logical reason why we couldn't do it. So we did it. And, in hindsight, I look back and like, well, we might have thought this one through better. You look at the house you bought quickly and you think, all right, maybe I would have done that a little differently. But, Dan Kennedy said something years ago that always stuck with me, which was, if you're an entrepreneur, you should be able to live wherever you want to live, which is kind of funny because he's a guy who chooses to live in Cleveland, Ohio, which if you know much about Cleveland, you'd wonder why. It's probably like someone living up in Liverpool. It's way up there. And it's
I'm not saying anything about Liverpool.
Yeah, but
It's a wonderful
I know,
city.
I've never been there other than watching the US Open once, or the British
Yeah.
Open once as well. But in any event, so I always had this idea, systems. And 5 years ago, after having a lot of financial advisors reach out to me for advice on how to run their business like I run mine, I finally decided, all right, well, we'll start a business, if you will. We'll start a program that other advisors can acquire, and I will teach them how to run their business like a business the way I do it, so that the focus is really more on two things, profitability and freedom. And in those, if you do those two things right, you will serve your clients the best. I always say, if you really understand what acting in your self-interest truly means, it means you treat your clients really well, and you actually set up your practice so that you can maximize revenue with as few clients as possible. That will give you more time to achieve what you want with your clients, as well give you a balance in your life. So the two work together. When I talk about, a practice that gives you a lot of free time, a lot of profitability, it's because when you do it that way, you'll have more resources to dedicate to your existing clients, which will improve your retention level and improve your overall performance as a planner.
Absolutely improve the quality of your life massively as well.
Yeah.
There's one thing I'd like to go back to. You said that you expect to have setbacks and you're okay with that.
Uh-huh.
Many of our listeners and viewers may struggle with setbacks. So what is there in your mindset that allows you to be okay with setbacks and to accept them and to be able to move on quickly?
I think, I don't know if this is the answer, but I have actually thought about this. I think that's the one value. Well, there's many values, but I think it's one of the real important things why children should compete at young ages to learn about life. So whether it be sports or chess or whatever, competition teaches you about life. And when I played sports, we won and we lost all the time. It was something that it just happened. I never had the benefit of, I hear about these great athletes who, they go undefeated for like 8 years. No, I didn't have that. So that taught me, that this was norm. But I also saw just lots of examples of people that they had the quality of persistence. And there's so many great biographies that you can read about people who failed time and time again. I mean, Abraham Lincoln's a great example. Who failed time and time again until he got it right. So I don't know. I just felt that I could do it. Don't get me wrong. I don't like to lose. I don't like to fail. I just have a short memory about it. And I know that this is a persistence game. I've met a lot of people with all humility who don't have half the capabilities that I have, and they're far more successful than I am. Why is that? Well, they have this level of persistence and implementation that carried them. And I learned more from them, quite frankly, than I ever learned from the brilliant people.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
And I guess they have a mindset which expects more. It is our expectation of what we can achieve. that
Well,
really which brings in so
well,
much.
I think it comes down to, at least in my case, that while I do expect to achieve, I don't think success is really all that hard. I think that there's been so many examples of it that, and we don't live in a zero sum game world, contrary to what some people want us to think. We don't. There's opportunity for everybody to succeed. My success or your success doesn't take away from somebody else. So when you understand that the opportunity is there, the blueprint is there. I mean, you can learn so much from other people. And if you want, you can find people that are less talented than you, less good looking than you. I mean, and who have succeeded far better. So, you know, you learn from that. And I think that's, really was. Now, as a young child, young 12, 13, I had the opportunity of reading a lot of books about the subconscious mind, and how you can nurture your subconscious mind to help you in life. And Think and Grow Rich was the first book, which probably every business owner has read, along with the E-Myth. But then The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy, Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. All these books reiterated to me at a relatively young age the ability to fuel your brain in the right way. Now, as a young person, and this is where it kind of frustrated me a little bit, I used to use those techniques of programming my subconscious mind to excel on the athletic field. Unfortunately, though, genetics are what genetics are, and I, ran into frustration. Although maybe from there I got the persistence of not quitting. But when I got into the real world, if you will, the ability to control my mindset by fueling it with positive thoughts during meditation really has gone a long way. So the life that I lead today is very much the life that I planned to lead. It didn't just kind of happen. Now, I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I felt quite strongly that if I had a very clear end game, and I had to develop an action game. It's just that things never follow the action the way you want. It's kind of like a battle. Battles never go the way that they're scripted out. And they know that going in. So they're like, okay, what's going to be plan B, plan C, et cetera. And that's kind of, what I did there. But, there's a lot of people who have a lot more success than me. There's a lot of people who have less success than me. I think that in the end of the day, it just comes down to how well are you willing to apply those things? How well are you willing to implement those things? And don't let the setbacks affect you. Expect them. You don't, I hate to use war metaphors, but they work. When you go into battle, unfortunately, you do expect to lose a few men. You just do. It doesn't prevent you from continuing on. You got a bigger mission at hand. And I think sometimes people get so scared of failing that they forget that the easiest resource to replace in the world is money. The one resource you can never replace is time. I mean, that's gone. I mean, at 58 years old now, I am really aware. No, wait a second. I think I'm 57. I'm going to be 58. I am highly aware that time is finite, but money is not. It is not. It's only your attitude that keeps it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great words of wisdom there. I'd like to talk to you about implementation, because as you said, if you've got a great strategy, if you're implementing, you're pretty, you're on a right road to have success.
Yeah.
So why do so many entrepreneurs, and we'll call them entrepreneurs, business owners, why do they hesitate? Why do they procrastinate? Why aren't they implementing?
Yeah. I think they try. I think in many cases, they don't know the techniques to help them be better. So for example, when I created Advisor Architect, I essentially learned that multitasking was highly inefficient. So I made it a point to schedule my tasks like appointments on my calendar, and then put myself in a distraction-free zone. So nobody could get me. The only way my wife could get me would be to call the place that I was at, but I didn't even have my cell phone with me. And the only discipline that I had to have was, when I was on my computer, was to only have one window open, no email. So for that 3-4 hours that I put myself in that distraction-free zone, I was able to accomplish massive amounts of things. And sometimes I didn't need all 4 hours because I had a very clear understanding of what I was going to do. And I operate the same way with my schedule now. And a lot of people will compliment me on how productive and prolific I am. And I don't really think I'm any more prolific than the next person. It's just that I dedicate certain time and there's absolutely no distraction for that. Now, that's more of a technique. A lot of people are held back for implementation. Part of it is fear. It's still the fear of going forward. It's the fear of spending money that you may not get back. All right. And look, if you're fearful of losing money, then you probably shouldn't do it because you're going to lose some money. All right. I mean, there isn't a single name a failure. I've tried it. Name anything in business that, the next shiny object, trust me, to a certain extent, I've wasted money on that too. It's just that on the things that worked, I maximized those and I really hit on those and I didn't stop doing those things. So I think with a lot of people, it's part of his fear. I think it's also the unwillingness to utilize other people in the implementation process. I had when I started Advisor Architect, it was kind of slowly going. And then I brought in a partner and we partnered up for about 3 years. And even though at the end, the partnership didn't work out well, the fact that I had somebody else on my team with skills completely different than mine. I mean, she didn't know the first thing about personal finance. In fact, she's Canadian. That's why I have this Canadian shirt on because I would go visit her. But that was huge because I was able to now have somebody else who saw things and implemented things. So like today, I have challenged myself to keep my work to mostly ideas and then delegate the implementation of those ideas to other people with very few exceptions. Other than some of my writing, I try to give it to somebody else. Now, I know people listening to this will say, well, that's easy to say, it costs money. I didn't get there overnight. So fine. Become an implementer by making sure you really want to do it. There's a lot of people who say I want to win a gold medal in the Olympics. There's only a few people out there who are willing to give up their whole personal life to do it. I mean, right now, there's some athlete somewhere who probably hasn't come out of his house, but is working out like a fiend because he's fearful as heck that right before the event, he's going to get COVID. So he's like, I don't care. This is the only thing that matters to me. Not exactly a well-balanced life, but there are people like that. And they usually are the greatest of athletes, the greatest musicians. They have terrible lives away from that. But anyway, you have to want it. And then secondly, if you really, really want it, then you're going to be willing to do the sacrifices and the trade-offs. And something like isolating yourself for 4 hours to get done the work that needs to be done is one of those things. Not doing the things that you enjoy doing in the short run so that you can do them much more in the long run. That's one of the prices that you got to pay. Not everybody's willing to pay that price. So it's easy to wish for stuff. It's easy to even be envious of people who have the things that you want. But if you really understood what it would take an athlete to be at the gold medal level, a lot of people wouldn't want to go there. They see the end result. They don't see the day-to-day, the dieting, the monotonous workouts that they do. When they're not performing, they're studying. We don't see that stuff. We just see the end result and we're like, oh, aren't they lucky? No, they're not lucky. I mean, they have some genetics, sure. But trust me, there's people with the same gene pool as them who haven't achieved nearly as much. So you got to want it. Try your hardest to build an implementation team. And if you can't do that because of finances, fine. But make sure that you are dedicating blocked off time every day for you to learn what you need to learn and then to implement. I mean, we live in such an amazing age now where you can learn almost anything with a freaking video on YouTube. It's amazing to me. How often I get frustrated and I realize, just go on YouTube. Look, it's right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
this is true.
Yeah.
Let's just dig it down a little bit more. So you have allocated this time, say 4 hours to work on a project.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes think, oh, let me just do this first and then I'll start doing it? How do you make yourself sit down and use that time? Because it's easy to waste an hour faffing around, telling yourself I'm going to do it. But how do you get yourself to actually use that time for the project rather than just frittering it away?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to tell you that every time I block off four, I only work focusing on those four. Okay. Life is full of distractions. Um, One thing that I did, particularly when I created all the materials that were required for the advisor architect programs, was I went to a coffee shop about 30 miles away from where I lived. Nobody knew me. And as a result, I didn't have a lot of the, there was no chance that I was going to get distracted by another person. Okay. The second thing that I did was I blocked off, like I said, all communications. So the phone was in the car, and all I had to do is have the discipline of just having, one computer open. But now the way I operate now is I don't work from home very often. So you and I are doing this from home, but what I do is I have one of those community offices, I guess you'd call them, where you rent time, and it's a big open workspace, and they have desks and cubes and all these other things. Nobody knows me there. So when I go, I can go in some back corner and be completely left alone. So for me, that works. But you have to understand too, the stuff I'm doing, I really want to do it. And in some cases, I have made commitments and deadlines where people are paying me to produce. So it went from doing it because I really wanted to do it, and that was the only reason, to now I want to do it and I have to do it. But those are the little tricks that I've learned. It's just you just got to be in a distraction-free zone. But trust me, during various times, like when the Masters is on or the U.S. Open, I assure you, I'm checking scores throughout the day to see how Tiger Woods is doing and all that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing that. But the other thing too, and this is the advantage of being self-employed, is I don't always work from 9 to 5. So I might work from 8 to midnight, or what's more likely from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So there's not a whole lot of distractions going on at 4 a.m. All right. So little things like that have helped me to do it as well.
So tell me more about your 4 a.m. start.
Well,
that's a discipline, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's called insomnia. And
Oh.
when I'm in a highly productive mode, and I'm actually in one now. So I got up at 4 a little before 4 a.m. this morning. I My mind is going. And in fact, I don't want to go to bed the night before, but I do. And usually if you get up at 4 a.m., I mean, I'm in bed by 9. I'm out. So really to go to bed at 9 and wake up at 4, it's just a normal sleep pattern, right? No different. It's not like I can go to bed at midnight and get up at 4. No, that's not going to play. So, but when I've got a lot of ideas, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. with more ideas in my head. That's how your subconscious works. It'll feed you ideas throughout the evening while you're sleeping. It never sleeps. And so I've always explained to my wife, I said, don't worry about me when I go into what you perceive as being an insomniac mood. I'm not. I mean, I am, to the extent that I'm not sleeping normal hours. One, I will probably always nap. But secondly, that means that I'm motivated and I'm going. Though the opposite is times in my life where I've had to deal with depression, not in a clinical sense, but we get down as people. That's when I really want to sleep, and that's not good. So I don't really view, 4 o'clock. I'm good. If I'm awake, let's go. Because I know from 4 to 8, before any people start trying to contact me, I'm going to get massive amounts of things done. And I already know in advance what I'm doing the first thing in the morning. So
yeah, and I imagine that's very satisfying to know you've done that big chunk of work. There's a world is starting to get up.
Yeah,
and you still got the whole day ahead of you.
Play golf or do whatever you want to do, you can do it, but it doesn't have to be done during those normal hours.
Great, I love that 4 a.m. start. Dan, what moment would you say in your life has had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah,
where you felt you changed, you just changed direction and it really changed your life.
Well, you asked me to think about that before we got started. And, I'm one who always tries to avoid the typical answers. And these are all important times in my life, like meeting my wife, having our son. Truthfully, it would have to be shortly after my son was born, and I would do the night feedings. And I sat down with him and I turned on TV, which, this was the 90s. So we had more channels than we had when we were growing up, but still not many. And there was a pastor who was visiting Kansas City where we were. And he talked about bringing Jesus into your life and how to do that, like from a actual, here are the steps to do it. And as somebody who was born in the Catholic Church, and I consider myself Catholic today, but you don't really get an instruction manual. It's just like, well, here's who you are. And this pastor, who was from Argentina, gave a very specific step, and that changed my life. Now, having said that, I'm probably the worst. I always say I'm the worst Christian anybody will know, because I sin and mess up all the time. I mean, just yesterday, I thought of a classic example with an altercation with somebody. But after having been an atheist for a good part, well, at that point, my entire adult life, now at this point, I was in my 30s, to changing. And I'm not going to, it wasn't one of these where suddenly the heavens open, but he made me look at things in a much more logical way than I had ever looked at them before. That was, I still consider myself a Christian at birth, but that was the day that changed me. I don't know the exact date. Some people can give you, it was sometime in 1994. That's all I can tell you, because that's when our son was born. But that opened up a lot of things for me, and made me a little bit more, well, I just saw a bigger part of life. And, I attribute whatever God's given me. That was probably the day I started listening to him.
What did he say? What did the pastor say that had such an impact?
Oh, he said, you have to, in your prayers, you literally have to tell God, I want you in my life. I know that I'm having, trouble either believing you or in you and following you. But, because he always said, he goes, God's a polite God. And if you sincerely want it. And so that's what I did. I mean, I just kind of had a conversation with them. Now, truthfully, even during my so-called hardcore atheist moments, I still felt Jesus was the one. I was just having trouble grasping it all. And so it wasn't really a hard sell for me. But once I started asking him, a lot of the doubts and conflicts I had about religion in general clarified greatly. And so, that was really the technique, was just more of having a conversation, literally saying to him, look, I'm having trouble with this, please come in. And then the other thing too, is to accept the reality that sometimes he ain't going to make it easy on you. So you got to be persistent. You can't just say, well, I never pray for stuff. I pray for things like wisdom and compassion and the ability to suppress my own emotions. But like, for example, I got a good friend who at 2:30 today, I'm going to find out whether or not he has lymphoma. Now, to me, life is God's will. And I don't view dying as a bad thing. It's bad for us that are left behind. Okay. But if we lose this dear, dear friend of mine, which I don't expect, probably because I think it's what God needs him. Okay, fine. What I'm going to ask for when I do pray for him is I'm like, I want to be there to be supportive of him. I want to be able to say the right things. I want to be able to support his family and his wife. And that's what I pray for. So I think that helps me in terms of my faith, because I think a lot of times people, they pray for stuff. But you didn't think this podcast was going in a really religious direction, did you? A lot of people can pay for, or they even pray for outcomes. And I think God gives you everything you need to know to get the outcome that you want.
So that's a great way.
You just have to have the courage, to do it, and strength to avoid the temptation that will steer you away from your chosen path.
Yeah, and it's interesting when the pastor said that, you were open and ready to hear it and receive it.
Yeah. Well, when you got a screaming kid and it's 3 a.m, you're sleep deprived, it's probably the right time.
Yeah, you're open to receiving. Absolutely.
It's a form of torture. You're open to anything at that point in time.
Now, I asked you if there's one question you wish that I'd asked you, in which I haven't. You said this is the question.
Okay.
What color is your hair?
That's right. So if you're listening to this rather than watching the video, you can see that I am bald. Well, the answer now would be gray, very gray. but it was once brown.
Brown. Okay, great. So listeners,
I
readers,
still have color in my
he used to be an
eyebrows.
auburn. No, he used to be a brunette.
Yeah, I used to be a
A
brunette, right?
brunette.
So kind of a darker brown is what.
I
It was
can
not
picture
a
it now.
overly distinctive color or anything.
Fantastic. So, Dan, how can our listeners and our viewers find out more about you and the
Yeah.
amazing work that you do?
Well, a couple of ways. One, there's the Profitable Advisor podcast. So if you are interested, and even though the show is kind of built for financial advisors, it's really all about business and systems. And a lot of the guests, in fact, almost every guest, not all, but almost every guest has got nothing to do with financial services. So what I'm doing is I'm showing people how you can apply the things that other businesses do successfully to yours, no matter what line of work. So the Profitable Advisor podcast is a show that you may want to check that out. The other way would be go to my website, dancuprill.com, and Cuprill is Cuprill, 2 L's. And if you do that and you opt in, you're going to get two things. You're going to get one, my almost daily email, which I think you can attest to are quite fun.
I get it. It's brilliant. I love the subject lines you're using at the moment.
A lot of humor in there.
Love humor. They're great fun.
Lessons. And you know what? If you're
Highly recommend them.
Yeah, and if you're into email marketing, I mean, if anything, it's always good to learn from other email marketers. The other thing you'll get when you opt in is I'll send you a complimentary copy of my normally subscription-based newsletter called the Profitable Advisor Letter. So you'll get that. If you want to be a subscriber, the details will be forthcoming there as well. But dancuprill.com, probably the best place, and the Profitable Advisor podcast.
Well, we'll add those links on so everyone can visit them. Now, this normally we wrap up now, but there was one question which I wish I'd asked you, which I'm just going to add now. And so what is your top tip for everyone who's listening to increase their profits?
Okay, this probably won't be the answer that you're expecting, but I would go get the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, which again, I'm proving that I don't have any original ideas, right? But that book has no original ideas either. If you think back to the World War II era, again, I'm going to speak for the United States. We're coming out of the Great Depression, banks failing left and right. Nobody trusts the banking system at all. So what very often happened, and I can speak to this with my grandparents without a doubt, is grandpa would work. He had like a factory type job, and he got paid once a week. And like all of his other buddies who are from Ireland, they went to the bar after they got off from work on Friday, and grandma and a lot of other grandmas met them there. And they got most of the money back from them, so they didn't drink it. And it sounds terrible. This is the truth. It's my story. And then she would go home, and she would take all that money and she would put it in envelopes. And every envelope was assigned to a different group. And she knew that the sooner she could get to meet him at the bar, the more money they'd have. So that was waste. So what Mike Michalowicz has done in his brilliant book, Profit First, is he has shown people how to run their business like a profit center by first finding the waste, secondly, budgeting everything, and then thirdly, that which is deemed to be profit and owner's pay, that comes out immediately. So every time you get paid, the percentage of your revenue that you have budgeted to be for your personal, that comes out, and you are challenged now to run your business on the rest. Too often as business owners, we do the complete opposite. We take whatever crumbs are left, or we go into debt, and we delude ourselves into believing that spending money on our business is investing in our business. That is not always true. In fact, unless you're publicly traded, I would go as far as to say it's never true. You have expenses. You're not investing. Investing means you bought more of your company's stock. That's investing. If you buy a new printer, you're not investing. I'm not saying you don't need the printer, but just understand it's an expense. So that book has helped more people. I've always been a proponent of budgeting, but when I saw how well he explained as far as taking the profit out first, that created that discipline that we always talked about before about implementation. Well, if you're going to say, I want to have 25% profit this year, well, then how about every time you get paid, you automatically take 25% out and put it in a bank account in another bank that's got nothing, you can't even get your hands on it unless you drive over there, which is actually what he recommends that you do. So if you do that, you now force yourself to operate under the 75%. Trust me, you can do it, especially if you took the time to find the waste.
Absolutely wonderful. Love it. There's a lot packed in that last answer. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Dan, for being here. It's been such a pleasure having you on my show. And thank you for imparting your wisdom and the great knowledge that you've accumulated over the years. I think there's going to be a huge amount of value that everyone who's been listening and watching will find in this interview. For everyone who has been listening and watching, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye for now.